I need help. I need help. My husband was shot. I need help.
Okay, stay on the line with me. Did you see anybody around? Ma'am?
No.
Okay. You didn't see anyone? Okay. Ma'am? Hello? Ma'am, take a deep breath with me, okay?
Just visiting. This is his dad's house.
Okay.
We live in Georgia. We're in the military.
Was outside? Like he stepped outside to get the food?
No, the food was in the house. He was leaving.
Where were you at when this happened?
In the living room with my son.
I also have a military son. He was very distressed about the situation. You guys should look at the wife.
December 31st, 2018. Benton Harbor, Michigan, Staff Sergeant Tyrone Hassel III stepped outside his family residence. He had flown home on block leave, New Year's Eve, a reason to celebrate. He never made it back inside. Tyrone was 23 years old, a United States soldier assigned to Fort Stewart, Georgia. He had served overseas. He had done everything right, and on the one night he was supposed to be safe, surrounded by family, home for the holidays, someone was waiting for him outside his own front door. The 911 call came from his wife. Her voice was shaking. She said her husband had been shot. She said she didn't know who. She said she didn't know why.
911, what's the address of the emergency? 911.
I need help. My husband.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
I need help. I need help. My husband was shot.
Okay, and tell me exactly what happened. How many shots did you hear, ma'am? Ma'am? Hello?
Investigators would later learn that was a lie, not a small one, a calculated one, built over months across an ocean inside a marriage Tyrone believed was still intact. Because while he was deployed in South Korea, his wife had started a relationship with another soldier, and somewhere between the phone calls and the late-night messages, it stopped being an affair. It became something far worse. Before any of this becomes a crime story, it needs to be his story. Tyrone Hassel III was 23 years old, not a name on a case file, not a victim number, a 23-year-old man who had built something from almost nothing and was still building. He grew up in Benton Harbor, Michigan, a city that doesn't make things easy, a city where ambition costs something. Tyrone paid that cost. He enlisted in the United States Army and was assigned to Fort Stewart, Georgia, one of the largest Army installations in the country. He wore that assignment like a statement. This is what I chose. This is where I'm going. He had a wife, he had a young son, and he had a plan, not just for the next year, but for the kind of life that takes discipline to build. Army benefits, career progression, stability that Benton Harbor hadn't always offered. When his unit was posted to South Korea, he went. Because that's what the job required, because that's what soldiers do. He was overseas, separated from his family, doing what he'd signed up for. And when block leave came, that window of time the Army grants before a new assignment cycle, Tyrone Hassel did exactly what any father would do. He booked a flight home, home for the holidays, home for New Year's Eve, home to Michigan, home to his wife, home to his son. He had no reason to believe home was anything but safe. He had no reason to believe the people waiting for him were anything but family. That belief, that simple, reasonable belief, is what made what happened next so devastating, and what made the Army Criminal Investigation Division's eventual involvement so necessary. Distance does something to people, not always, but sometimes. While Tyrone was fulfilling his posting obligations overseas, his wife, Army Specialist Kemia Nekenah Hassel, was also stationed in South Korea. Same military environment, same daily structure, different choices. It was there that Kemia began a relationship with another soldier. His name was Jeremy Cuellar, and according to court records reviewed by the Michigan Court of Appeals, what developed between them was not a brief lapse in judgment. It deepened, it intensified, it moved, according to prosecutors, well beyond an emotional connection. phone communications, private messages, a relationship that grew while Tyrone remained unaware. But here is where the story shifts. Here is where it stops being about betrayal and starts being about something prosecutors would later argue was far more deliberate. Investigators found evidence that conversations between Kemia and Cuellar had moved into territory that had nothing to do with romance. They discussed Tyrone's Army life insurance, approximately $400,000 in potential benefits. They discussed timing, and according to testimony presented at trial, Jeremy Cuellar had spoken about needing Tyrone to simply go. Not leave, not disappear from the marriage, go. The conspiracy, if prosecutors were right, wasn't born in Michigan. It wasn't born in the heat of a confrontation. It was planted quietly, overseas, in the space that distance had created. And it grew from there.
We did discover that as part of their military insurance, when there is a death of a spouse, that she does get a settlement from the insurance company of about $400,000.
I brought up the money, and she admitted that was part of it. And that money would help her and her son get a better start with Jeremy.
To understand why this case is prosecuted the way it is, you need to understand one number, $400,000. Every active duty U.S. service member is eligible for coverage under the Service Members Group Life Insurance Program. It is a federal life insurance benefit. The maximum payout, $400,000. The named beneficiary collects upon the service member's death. In most military families, that beneficiary is a spouse. This matters legally and morally because it transforms the question. The question is no longer only who killed Tyrone Hassel III. The question becomes who stood to benefit. And when digital communications surfaced showing that Kemia and Jeremy Cuellar had discussed those insurance proceeds while Tyrone was still alive, the case changed shape entirely. This was no longer just an affair. Prosecutors argued it was a financial motive, premeditation, planning with a payout in mind. A third individual also entered the picture at this stage. Naira Whitelow, not the affair partner, not the spouse, but connected and later convicted for her role in the conspiracy. When financial motive is established in a murder case, the legal threshold for premeditation becomes easier to meet. It answers the hardest question a jury faces. Why would someone do this? $400,000. That was the answer prosecutors brought into that courtroom.
Prosecutors say that a woman and her lover plotted to kill her husband and knew tonight. We're getting a look inside the mind of one of the alleged killers. 24-hour News 8's Brady Gillum joining us live from Berrien County with what he has uncovered tonight. Brady.
By late December 2018, the pieces were already in motion. Tyrone was coming home. Block leave. Michigan, New Year's Eve. He had no idea what had been discussed while he was away. He had no idea that his return had been anticipated, not with excitement, with calculation. Because Jeremy Cuellar also traveled to Michigan, not to visit family, not for the holiday. Prosecutors argued his presence in the state was deliberate, timed to coincide directly with Tyrone's block leave window. Witness testimony would later place Cuellar in the area. Travel records confirm the movement. Think about what that means. This wasn't a crime of rage. It wasn't spontaneous. Someone had to look at a calendar. Someone had to coordinate travel. Someone had to confirm the window, when Tyrone would be home, when the opportunity would exist, when the timing aligned. New Year's Eve wasn't random, it was opportunity. The digital evidence trail, phone records, Snapchat communications, travel coordination would later help Army CID and Michigan law enforcement reconstruct exactly how that window was identified and used. But on the night itself, none of that had surfaced yet. On the night itself, Tyrone Hassel III just thought he was home. He was wrong. December 31st, late night, Benton Harbor, Michigan. Tyrone stepped outside the family residence. That's all. He stepped outside. What happened next took seconds. Gunshots. Inside the house, his wife, his son, the home he had flown across the country to reach. The 911 call came from Kemia. Her voice was shaking. Her husband had been shot outside. She didn't know who. She didn't know why. She needed help.
I need help. I told my husband was shot. I need help.
Law enforcement responded to the residents in St. Joseph Township.
We received a 911 call from a female subject.
Tyrone Hassel III was pronounced dead, 23 years old, New Year's Eve, home on block leave.
When did he get shot at?
Who is it? Do you know who he is?
Son, it's Tyrone Hassel III. When I got there, I can see where he was shot at, and I can see a big hole in the back of his head.
In those first hours, investigators had very little to work with. There was no forced entry, no sign of a struggle that pointed clearly to an intruder, no immediate suspect. The scene on the surface read as a sudden and devastating act of random violence. A soldier who had survived overseas, shot outside his own front door. The initial shock, inside the department, inside the community, was real. Who would do this? Why here? Why him? Why tonight? Those questions launched the investigation, and investigators would begin pulling threads almost immediately, because something about the scene, something about the call, something about the timeline didn't sit right. It would take time to prove, but the suspicion formed quickly. This wasn't random. This was personal. Investigators don't always know immediately when something is wrong, but they feel it. The statements didn't line up cleanly. Small things at first, timing inconsistencies, details that shifted slightly between retellings, the kind of friction that experienced detectives learned to follow. Phone records were pulled, and what came back wasn't the picture of a grieving wife with nothing to hide. There were communications, ongoing ones, an overseas relationship that investigators had not been told about, a connection to Jeremy Cuellar that ran deeper and further back than anyone had initially disclosed. Michigan law enforcement and Army Criminal Investigation Division began coordinating. Two separate jurisdictions, one overlapping thread. The digital evidence was extensive. Phone data, Snapchat messages, communications that predated Tyrone's block leave by months. The timeline, when reconstructed, created serious problems for the initial story being told. And then, a soldier came forward, someone who had heard things, someone who had decided that staying quiet was not something he was willing to do.
I also have a military son. He was very distressed about the situation. You guys should look at the wife.
Another soldier from the same base came forward and indicated that he had actually sold Jeremy 2 different handguns.
Can you explain that to me? Run that down.
Oh, I sold him firearms.
2 times? Okay.
One of the handguns was a Glock 9mm, I believe, and the other one was a Ruger 9mm. That was significant because the caliber of the weapon used to kill Tyrone III was a 9mm weapon.
Cases like this only come to light because people refuse to stay silent. If you care about truth in cases like this, subscribe. Not for the algorithm, for the victims. That decision, one person choosing to speak, would become the pivot point of the entire investigation. His name was Jaquan Hamilton, another soldier, someone who had been close enough to hear things that shouldn't have been said out loud. Hamilton told investigators that Jeremy Cuellar had spoken about Tyrone Hassel III directly, not in vague terms, not in the language of frustration or jealousy. Cuellar had said Tyrone needed to go. 4 words, and they changed everything. Because what had been a circumstantial case, built on phone records and timeline inconsistencies, now had a human voice attached to it. Intent, stated intent, from the man prosecutors believed had traveled to Michigan to carry it out. Hamilton's statement triggered a deeper phase of investigation. Detectives went back through the digital communications with new context, Snapchat records, call logs, message threads. Prosecutors began reconstructing the full coordination, who spoke to whom, when, and about what. The picture that emerged was not one of a crime of passion. It was organized, deliberate, discussed in advance by people who believed they had covered their tracks. They hadn't. One witness, one statement, and the entire architecture of the cover story began to fracture irreparably.
Now, a Fort Stewart soldier has pleaded guilty to killing another soldier in an apparent plot to collect his death benefits. The plea deal calls for 25-year-old Jeremy Cuellar to serve a minimum of 65 years in prison. He is accused of murdering Army Sergeant Tyrone Hassel III in January. Cuellar was apparently in a romantic relationship with the victim's wife, Kemia Hassel, who also served at Fort Stewart. According to prosecutors, the two worked together to kill Tyrone. A judge found the victim's wife guilty for her part in the murder earlier this
When the
month.
charges came, they were precise. First-degree premeditated murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Not manslaughter, not second-degree, premeditated, the highest charge available, reserved for cases where the evidence shows planning, intent, and deliberate execution. Kemia Nekenah Hassel was charged. Jeremy Cuellar was charged. Naira Whitelow, the third conspirator, was charged. Cuellar eventually entered a plea. He did not go to trial on first-degree murder. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, an acknowledgement of killing without the full weight of premeditation attached to his plea. The deal did not spare him significantly. His sentence, 65 to 90 years. Naira Whitelow was also convicted for her role in the conspiracy. Her involvement, supporting, facilitating, participating in the planning, was enough. Enough for charges. Enough for a conviction. Kemia chose to fight it. She would take her case to trial, and the prosecution would be waiting with everything they had built. The phone records, the messages, the insurance policy, the witness, all of it. Freedom was narrowing for all of them. The trial moved with the weight of everything that had accumulated: evidence, testimony, a recorded jail call, Kemia's own voice captured while she was in custody, in which she acknowledged getting mixed up in something, and that the planning had begun overseas, in South Korea, while Tyrone was still alive. That call did what no prosecutor's argument could fully replicate. It removed ambiguity. In her own words, the grieving widow narrative collapsed. July 18, 2019, the jury returned its verdict: guilty, first-degree premeditated murder, conspiracy. On August 29th, Kemia Nekenah Hassel was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. No timeline, no review date, life. The defense appealed. They argued ineffective assistance of counsel, a legal claim that the attorney representing Kemia at trial had performed so poorly that the outcome was fundamentally compromised. They also raised a battered partner syndrome argument, suggesting her actions should be understood through the lens of abuse. It is worth understanding what ineffective assistance of counsel actually means in law. It is not enough to argue that a lawyer made mistakes. The standard requires proving both that the attorney's performance fell below what a competent lawyer would provide, and that those failures directly affected the outcome. Appellate courts do not second-guess trial strategy easily. They defer to the original verdict unless there is clear, reversible error. On October 27, 2022, the Michigan Court of Appeals reviewed the record and affirmed the conviction. Every argument considered, every argument rejected, the verdict held. There is a child in this story, Tyrone's son, who was there that night, who grew up without a father because of decisions made by the people who were supposed to protect his family. That is the part that doesn't make it into legal filings. It doesn't appear in appellate opinions, but it is the part that remains long after the sentencing documents are filed and the courtroom empties. Kemia Nekenah Hassel will spend the rest of her life in prison. Jeremy Cuellar will spend the next 65 to 90 years in prison. Naira Whitelow was convicted. The Michigan Court of Appeals affirmed what the jury decided. The system, slowly, imperfectly, did what it was built to do. But accountability is not the same as repair. A sentence doesn't return what was taken. It doesn't close the absence. One New Year's Eve, one block leave, one soldier who flew home because that's what fathers do. 3 people who had decided, months before he landed, that he wouldn't leave again. The military community felt this case, not just as a crime, as a breach of something fundamental: trust between soldiers, loyalty within a marriage, the assumption that home is safe. All of it violated deliberately for $400,000 and whatever else was driving the calculation. Was this about love, about money, or something darker? The kind of decision that requires a person to stop seeing another human being as a person at all. And when trust breaks at this level, when the people closest to you are the architects of your end, can justice ever really repair what's left?